Hi there, and welcome to Inside the Wooniverse, a podcast brought to you from the corner of Fringe and Maine. I'm your host, Colette Baron-Reid, and with me today is the awesome Rich Lister. Now, Rich Lister is a trained nurse, intuitive body worker, life coach, spiritual guide, and author. But this is the cool part. Rich has been reading and working with runes for 20 years and is the author of Runes Made Easy, Access the Magic of the Ancient Northern Oracle. Welcome, Rich.
It's an absolute honor to be here. Thank you so much to be having me.
Oh, I'm so happy that you're going to be here. I was so exciting. So in reading your bio, which has been quite enlightening, I came across this sentence, which I absolutely love. He is made from the stuff of Vikings, and his interest in all things Norse began at the age of 4. Can we go back to the age of 4 and tell me why?
Oh, yeah. So my dad's family, we traced it back using all the ancestry stuff to Northumbria, and they didn't move around back in like the 17th century very much. So there's and Lister means potter in Old Gaelic and Old Pictish. So there's a large probability that my dad's family were Scandinavian in origin, because I'm 6'7", I'm big, I've got a slightly gingery beard, and from that side of things, my mum's family traces back to the Normans. So
Right.
And they were Vikings back in before they became like normal settled Christian Normans. And so yeah, there's a large chunk of Viking heritage in my ancestry.
Love that. Did you ever watch that show, Vikings?
I did. I haven't watched the last series yet. It got a bit ultra violent, and I didn't want to. Yeah, it was a bit overstimulating when everything was
I put a blanket on my head.
in the world.
I haven't seen any of it. Ask my husband. I've seen Vikings twice and seen none of it, like that part. I just go, is it over? Is it over? Is it over?
I like the hairstyle. I haven't got enough hair for it.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. I love that because, now that we have 23andMe and Ancestry.com, we can really trace our ancestry, etc. And it makes sense where you're talking about it, because those were the places in Britain that were settled by the ancient Vikings and the Norse. So tell me about what happened when you were 4. So when you were 4, you didn't have Ancestry.com. So
No. No, when I was 4, I was always fascinated by the myths and the stories of everything. And because my dad was a doctor, he was a family doctor, and he was working a lot. So when he came home, he would tell me lots of stories that he was taught when he was little. And I grew up listening to all these stories of ancient myths and things like that. And then as I grew older, I'd look out for these stories that resonated with me in these ways. And as I came into adulthood, I discovered things like actual proper Vikingness, opposed to just Playmobil and Lego and things. And then moving further into it as I became older, discovered more Viking and the Nordic roots of things and how everything evolved in Europe around that time. And I find it fascinating with the barrows in Sutton Hoo, or the settlements around in Kent, where I was born, where the Danes and the Utes landed, or where I am now on the south coast. The Isle of Wight is where the Jutes landed, and they were the last pagan kingdom in England. And all these different things just evolved into where I am right now, sitting talking to you about Vikings and Viking runes. And it's something that really fizzes in my body and in my neurology.
And I do think that we know, I had a similar experience when I was 4. My dad also, he had these books about myths and legends from all the cultures all over the world, and he would read to us too. And one of my favorite was the myths and legends of the Norsemen. So that was one of my favorites as well, too. That's very interesting. And you kind of feel it in your body. And I know some people don't believe in past lives, etc. I mean, in your case, you actually have a blood lineage there. But sometimes you just feel it, that you somehow, have this amazing connection anyway. Like I don't have a Nordic bone in my body, and I love anything to do with this, but it's very similar to my Balkan Slavic roots. Very, very, very similar.
I think especially with the Balkan Slavic tribes and the Nordic Vikinga, they intermarried a lot. Yep. And there's a story of like an Icelandic king who had a Balkan wife, and they went off and raided, and they were perhaps part of the family that went over to Newfoundland in in the 900s. So there's a whole link there from like the Balkans, the Slavic countries, through the Vikings, especially through Constantinople and all that sort of stuff, where they all traded everything from wives, husbands, gold, silver, everything.
I love that they traded wives, husbands, gold, and silver. Yeah, that's so cool. And it's very interesting because I have such an affinity for Iceland. So it's amazing that you said he had a Balkan Slavic wife, because that is 80% of my DNA and what I know. And that's so cool. So let me ask you this then. Let's go back to, because you obviously are a scholar now of this. When you were little, you played with it. Then as you got older, it became your focus and how you dove into the understanding. And I do think that we're not independent of our history. We are our history. And so being able to take the things that we've lost and bringing it now to our modern world, bringing the ancient wisdom to our modern world, is what we need. I think we all got kind of lost along the way when we lost some of the ancient techniques of tuning into spirit, etc. So when did, so I know you're an intuitive, you're known for that as well too. Tell me about when you became really aware that your intuitive capacity to tune into the world around you was something a little stronger than most.
So part of my history is that of being a trained nurse, and
right.
I spent quite a large chunk of the early 2000s working in the ER. And I don't know if you've ever been in a hospital at night. They're weird ass places. So not only do you have like the ER with all the energy moving around because people are coming in with all kinds of stuff all the time, but if you go off into the corridors of these, because I was in a big teaching hospital near me, and the energies that stalk the corridors at night, not malevolent. There's no malevolence there because it's all full of good stuff. But people come to hospital to die or be sick, and so these energies are there. And if you tell them to go away, they go away because they're not malevolent. That's just where they live. Like a cat lives in your garden, or a fox, or whatever. And when I started seeing those, when I'm moving patients from ward to ward or going to get a blood sample or something, it's like, why is no one else talking about this? And then if you mention it, everyone shuts you down really quick, because I think you'd be challenged to find a nurse who hasn't had a feeling of a weird sensation in a room with a patient who's dying or a patient who's getting better. And then one time I came across a guy who was dying of cancer. It was on his literally last minutes, and there was this entity feeding off his energy.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, that's not good. And so I told the entity to Foxtrot Oscar. And
Foxtrot Oscar. I'm going to start using
abbreviation.
That now. Yes.
Go away. told the entity to go away. It did. And the guy lasted for a couple of hours so his family can come in. And then that caused me to go down a slightly more esoteric, metaphysical route with how I was approaching the world. And that led me to a pagan camp and pagan people, and realizing, oh, this really resonates with me. And then standing by a fire one night at 3 a.m. and speaking to a one-eyed god standing in the flames who told me to go off and learn the runes. And I was like, oh, okay, all right.
Oh, I love that story.
And one thing led to another, and here I am.
Wow. I mean, as it's interesting because I remember I started as an aromatherapist. I mean, I started actually as a musician, but when I really, really got that I knew what I was seeing was totally on, because I had it since I was a kid. But then as you get older, you want to fit in everywhere, whatever. And but I remember touching somebody and seeing an entire storyline, of that person's difficulties. And in this case, they were molested, and I even knew the name. And, you can't deny that. These stories are true. I've also seen an entity feeding off of an entire group of people when I was away at another author's big event, and we were doing this meditation since 3 a.m, and it was pretty trippy. Like, nobody can tell me that those things don't exist. And we either feel them and not know what we're feeling, because everybody can feel them. I believe it's not special. But some of us, it's like everybody can run, but not everybody can run in the Olympics, right? So you're sort of the Olympic runner of seeing these particular things, like I am as well. But I do think now, and tell me if you agree with me, that there's an evolution going on where a lot more people sensitivities are starting to grow. Would you say that's true?
I completely agree. If we look at geek hat on, um, if we look at how humanity's evolved since using the Christian 00 when Christ was born,
Right.
we had a very, very spiritually connected people.
Right.
And over 2,000 years, we've split like a tree struck by lightning, with the
Hmm.
spiritual world, like the other world maybe, and this corporeal world that we can touch right here, right now.
Hmm.
And we split. And the further we go up time, we get more and more divorced from our connection to spirit,
Hmm.
to the universe, whatever you want to call it. And now we've had, what, 2,000 years of that. And until like the year 2000, when there was this huge outcry of humans being exuberant of being alive in the year 2000, the energy starts to come back a bit.
Hmm.
And you can really see it and feel it with the rise of the light worker, with the rise of the yoga, with the rise of all of these spaces where women specifically are grasping at their goddess given, God given right
Hmm.
and power to connect with the universe.
Hmm.
And the old Christian monks knew it, that the power comes through the women. So they converted women first, and then they converted their husbands back in like 200 AD. So,
Wow. This is so
uh,
interesting.
so we know that the power comes through the women first, and the men catch up later. So
Uh-huh.
this is where we're seeing all these light workers and these energies coming from, and I can really feel and see and observe this power coming into the universe, into our world, back again as it was maybe pre-Christian, pre-Atlantean, pre-Lemurian, whatever markers you want to put in the world's timeline. So
Hmm.
yeah, I agree. We are vibing higher than we have for 2,000 years, I think.
Yeah, it might even be longer than that. And maybe you'd agree or not agree, but when you think of the age of Taurus, for example, that there was more of a culture that saw the feminine because they saw the whole world as this feminine, like the goddess culture. And
Yes.
then, of course, we have all the different splits in the age of Aries with the advent of weapons. So there's just a lot that we've all evolved through. And now I don't think we're going back to anything. I think we're waking up to bring back a thread. I don't know if you agree with me on that, but that we're remembering what the thread was so that we could weave something new.
Yes, because the energy is still there. If you don't pick
Yes.
it up, it's still energy. It's like a radioactive thing. It still sits and glows quietly in the darkness.
Yeah.
And we, again, not going back to it, but rediscovering, oh wow, this is awesome. It can power the universe from this belief pattern that we have that's millennia old, using human numbers, that we can then connect to and hone in on, and realize into our world now, be you in Canada, America, Europe, wherever you are, just to bring this energy through you in a way that's meaningful for you.
Right.
And there's no right or wrong way for this, because we've literally burned it out of most cultures on how to do it the right way. So we've got to discover it again.
Oh, I love that. And that's so true. I love that you said that. We literally burned it out of most cultures because of that separation, that lightning bolt that split the
Mm.
tree. Everything has split. So now we have to find a new way to weave it back together. And is that how, let's go back to that concept of the thread. Is that what it felt like for you when you discovered runes? Was like picking
Yeah,
up a thread energetically that you just knew?
that's a really good analogy. Thank you. It's, yeah, that sense of knowing. And I don't know if I've got the right language to describe the right feeling of it. You know, when you put some nice fluffy socks on in the morning before you touch the cold floor, and it just feels good.
Yeah.
That's that kind of feeling of, oh yeah, this is for me. Thank you very much.
I love the image of a 6'7" Viking-ish man putting fluffy socks on and saying, "Yeah, this is what it feels like for me to
Yeah,
work with
yeah,
runes." I
that's
love
it.
it, but it is the comfort. It's the comfort. So, why are runes so magical? Let's talk about the runes, because that's your magic.
Yeah, that's my jam. The runes for me are that radioactive isotope I just spoke of. It's
Mm.
that glow in the darkness that resonates really quite potently with me and how I perceive the universe. I see the universe as a series of attractive energies Sometimes I might be vibrating in a way that the energy is attracted to me. So energy of abundance may come to me, or energy of strength, or energy of defense, or potential, or initiation. And the runes hold these energies in these little scribed forms. If you haven't seen the runes, runes look like very simple pictographs. That's interesting, that one. Peroth, and this is the Elder Futhark. So that's one from like 600 AD. And that one means luck in some cases, or sex, if you want to go down the X-rated version. And the runes are very simple structures that hold quite a powerful meaning. The same way the modern alphabet that we use in most of Europe, in the United States and Canada and things, holds meaning. The runes also hold meaning beyond just the letter sound. They hold the meaning into the energy that they were charged with.
So I like to look at them like they're little icebergs. So we only see the tips of them, and the vocabulary, the lexicon, they're always going to be the same. I think they're 24, the Elder Futhark. Is that correct?
Yes.
So then you have this lexicon of the vocabulary of these pictographs, like you said, that hold these giant stories underneath that you can tune into. Is that how you see it?
That's, again, really good analogy. Thank you. I definitely see the little lines that we see carved in rocks or on swords or in rune sticks from graves. Especially there's one in down in where's it? One of the Balkan Islands. There's got a grave with a woman buried with little silver rune sticks, and these runes hold that potential. So exactly like an iceberg, you only see the tiny little bit at the top, but beneath it's much more grand and huge because you can follow the story. And with the runes, part of the problem is that, as I said a minute ago, we've burned away everyone who learned the runes because the runes were held by the Volva, the witch, the woman of the village, the tribe, the people. And the people recording it were monks who were masculine from a patriarchal construct who didn't really care what women said because women didn't matter. So the stories were all written down through a very masculine lens, who are trying to convert pagan ideas into a Christian idea. So that's why we have a very Christianized, masculinized set of rune poems. As a human now delving into the runes with this knowledge, it's my job to realize that these runes don't have the same patriarchal constructs that may have evolved over the last 1200 years. They have a very different idea that has been lost into time. So I need to work out how it fits for that energy in my world.
Right. And our world is changing. You know, definitely. That I think one of the biggest issues is language, is linguistics. Remember you said we don't have the words, we don't have the language. There's not enough nuance right now. And I'm hoping the English language, or our language in the whole world, starts to evolve to add some of the nuance that was lost, because even our language has that patriarchal system built into it, right? Definitely. Of right, wrong, you know, the duality, the polarities, etc. So how did you learn them? So did you just pick them up and started working them? Did you have a teacher?
I met a woman named Jez who lived in Nottingham. She taught the group I was part of, the Anglo-Saxon Futhark, which is similar to the Elder one, except longer and more complicated. And it has sounds that are associated much more with Latin words. So there's 36 runes in that one, opposed to 24.
Fascinating.
And then I went and learned the Elder Futhark, because that's one that really called me.
Yeah.
And that's when I put in the book. So I think that one's much more simple to learn, because the humans who developed that were much more simple human beings. So there's like a 500 years of difference of not interacting with the Roman Empire, with Christian monks and priests and things. So it's a very simple structure that then evolved later on through different lenses to what we have now.
So the Elder Futhark, is it Futhark or Futhark?
I think it depends on how you want to put the I say Futhark, but
Futhark. Okay.
Yeah, it's how you want to put the emphasis wherever you want it.
And that has 24. So that we have 24. So the lexicon is built of 24. The vocabulary is 24 symbols, etc. Yep. And are they read upright and reversed? Tell me a little bit about how you would read them.
So I'm a geek, and
I love that you're a geek.
A history geek at that. I did lots of Viking reenactment and Brahmano British reenactment, like dressing up with shields and swords and stuff. And from my studies and how I look at things, runes were used however they wanted them to look pretty on the thing. So the radio rune that looks like an R was
Yeah.
upside down or back to front or at a side, depending on how they wanted to fit it in with the rune stone or the carving they were making.
Oh,
So I don't believe that there is a reversed rune energy. The rune
interesting.
is either there or not. So, for
Aha.
instance, radio, like I just said, the journey rune. If you're doing a rule pull, if it's there, you've got a journey or an adventure, or there's a path stretching in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's not there, that energy is not really there so much. So you don't need to worry about that.
Aha.
And
Yeah.
I don't see them as negative or positive either, from the same
Right.
concept, because they're very primal energies. A lightning bolt isn't a negative or positive thing, it's just a thing.
Right.
A bear isn't a positive or negative thing, it is just a bear. You
Right.
have to manage it. That's what life is.
How would you talk about your specialty, which is really about resilience, spiritual resilience? And how does that connect to your work with runes? Because I know that that's a big part of what you teach and what you do.
Yes. Resilience has become quite an overused word in the last
Yeah.
2 years, I see. And it's been corporatized left, right, and center. I see resilience as the ability to adapt and overcome. And this is what something runes and the energies and the history attached to the runes bring really powerfully, I feel, because you have to be resilient to last for 700 years being buried under a bog in Denmark.
Yeah.
And being able to adapt the interpretation of the runes from something that was written down by 11th century monk into something that's applicable now in
Right.
the human world, and be able to use it that way, it changes how our brains start thinking about things. So taking a very wooden concept of this is what this rune means, this is the poem that goes with it, to how does that manifest in my world right here, right now, means our brains have to stop just believing what we've been told in the world and start thinking beyond the black and white prescriptive nature of education, of media, etc. So we start to go, okay, the strength rune means a giant ox. There's no giant oxes left anymore. But what happens if it means a bulldozer or a
Right.
giant 4x4 or a big articulated lorry or truck? And how all these energies can become adaptable for now.
Mm-hmm.
And by using the teaching model of the runes to build a resilient neurology within our bodies, then we can start to look at how concepts such as the Holmgang, which is the Viking honorable combat, can help to build our own physical resilience by increasing hand-eye coordination by balancing on rocks down by the beach, or by being able to move out of the way of things like Mr. Miyagi in the Karate Kid. All of these things build resilience in ways that aren't quite as black and white as sitting in a boardroom watching a PowerPoint presentation of someone who's a corporate resilience
Right.
trainer, which is great and powerful and works in certain environments.
Uh-huh.
But then we can take it into ourselves and bring our own personal resilience, because we're all wired differently ever so slightly. I've got a
Uh-huh.
neurodivergent body and mind, so
Oh,
I need to work
interesting.
my body and mind differently to someone who's got a different wiring to me. And by using runes and using ancient concepts that have been developed over millennia, I can then bring me into now as a more resilient human, and hopefully lead other people to a same state that they can face what comes and not crumble and go, I've got this, I know what I'm doing, let's do it.
I love that you equated the word resilience with adaptability, because I do think that that is when you think of, you create runes from trees. So when you think of a tree, you think of how a huge windstorm still can't fell a 500-year-old tree. They are adaptable to weather, to circumstances. They help each other, right? There's a communication amongst the trees.
Yes, the mycelium network, yeah.
Right, the network. So I love the way in which you spoke about how working with runes can reshape your neurology. You're right. So there's a whole different brain. Well, and I know this as well too, that when you start to see things, you automatically start to dissolve your conditioning, because the fixed conditioning can't stay there when you are changing the neural networks in your brain by using an intuitive tool, right? Am I
Yes,
right? Yes.
definitely. I concur completely.
What are some of your techniques? Tell me, what are some of your techniques that you love?
So my background is I've gone through the NLP mill, as many people have.
NLP
Um,
mill, I love that.
and I find lots of the tools there very useful. I went through that when I was in nursing, and I saw the power of being able to change someone's mindset and viewpoint to get them post big car crash to be able to walk again and things like that.
Wow.
So I use lots of NLP tools. I see NLP as a very modern distilled version of ancient shamanic techniques. Because if you look at things like shamanic parts reconciliation or shamanic dismemberment practices, or a lot of the drumming circles and things like that, the NLP has grabbed and refined and played with those techniques, taken all the fun bits out,
Oh.
and made it into a very clinical practice,
Clinical,
which is great for a very clinical world. But
right.
I don't believe we're in that world anymore, especially
No.
post-pandemic, as we're moving into that now.
Yeah.
That we need ritual, we need connection, not just through ourselves, but through community and to the land that we live on. And that's part of what my process is through that sort of mill there.
Nature, right? So do you take people out into nature for rituals? Or do you have very specific nature rituals? How do you do this, say, with clients or with groups, now that you're going to probably be able to see people in person?
Yeah, because I take people out to the woods. I'm off to the woods this weekend.
Ooh.
My family has a piece of land in Kent that we'll be going to, and we'll be doing some very primitive fire starting using flint and steel.
Wow.
And if you can start a fire using flint and steel in the British autumn and winter, then you're winning.
And you're winning.
Damn. And some of the old initiatory practices that we have forgotten as society to initiate people back into a bit more of a primal connected self. So finding the tinder, finding the flint, because in Kent is on chalk and flint, so you can literally dig a few inches into the soil and there is lumps of flint there that you can work with. And we'll be going and doing that. Then we'll be crafting hide drums from deer hide and ash hoops. Once we've done that, we'll leave them to dry. We'll eat around the fire. They'll go off to the hotel room, so it's a bit too cold to be sleeping out at the moment.
Yeah.
And then the next day, the drums will be dry, and then we can start playing them and having fun with them and bringing the energy of that drum energy into the drums. And I find that really fun and empowering way to do.
So you make drums obviously from scratch, from the wood and from the hide. And is there an ancestral lineage around this specific type of drumming? Is that because there's some Celtic as well as Norse heritage?
I don't think the Norse had drums like we'd see, especially the Native American frame drums, because they rock too fast to that far north. The Sami had them, which are the indigenous tribes that would roam the really far north and farmed reindeer. But the Vikings, it doesn't look like they had clay bowls with it. I haven't worked out how to bake clay yet, so I haven't tried that yet. They're clay bowls with hide over the top.
So this is more Anglo-Saxon?
More Saxon, more Norwegian, more Danish, that sort of thing.
Fascinating.
I think drum and beat and rhythm are something that we really lack in, especially modern Western society. Because we have again burned it all out of ourselves. We've replaced it with psalms and chants through the Christian church, and then we're now trying to learn it all again to go, but the African tribes have got these amazing beats that we want to use, or the Indian yoga beats, and the Hindu and the Afghani, and all these people have got amazing cultural histories that as a lot of Northern European people have lost due to,
and that's why we're attracted to it. I think, rather than it's because we're missing it in our bones, right? I think
we literally burned it in the witch trials of the Inquisition and things like that. And now we're desperately, as a culture, trying to go, where can we find our roots? And as you said earlier, with the 500-year-old tea is hard to blow down. When we have our roots, we're hard to shake. When the rootless tree will fall.
Yeah.
When we root down into ourselves, into our practices of spirituality, no matter where they come from, because they all work and they're all often given freely
Yeah.
to us to help us not be lost in the universe.
Hmm.
And as we learn these skills and these techniques and these spiritual connective practices, our roots go deeper. So therefore, we have a spiritual resilience that can face things like a coronavirus pandemic
Hmm.
or any other of the trials that we face in the universe, and become more resilient, more adaptable, more able to ride that wave like a surfer, opposed to being swamped by it.
Right.
Or unless you
Exactly.
want to be swamped by it, you can be like a turtle and just swim through.
Right.
And you have the choice with your adaptability, your resilience, to
Hmm.
see these things coming and going, oh, I've got this. I can cope. I can manage. I can excel.
And it's a holistic sense too, as opposed to training, around that specificity. Like you were talking about the boardroom, resilience training in the
Mm.
boardroom. It's not like that. It's about something that's holistic. It's nuanced. It's in your bones, right? It's in your bones. Okay. So, if you were to talk to somebody who really wants to learn runes, where would they start? Would they probably your book, right?
Oh, yeah, of course. Buy the book. You don't have to. I recommend it. I've spent a lot of energy and time and thought trying to make it as accessible as possible. Um, I wrote it to build so the reader can build their own practice of being a rune reader, opposed to just, oh, this is what a rune is.
Right.
Um, there's plenty and lots of resources on the internet. My one caveat with that is that a lot of the runic and especially Germanic Nordic stuff has been co-opted by some not nice human beings. So you've got
Right.
to be really careful. You're not reading a really racist
Racist. Yep.
website that's
Hmm.
got a very
I've seen
agenda
it.
on. Yeah,
I've
I don't
seen
want. I
it.
don't want the people. Sorry.
Yeah. I've seen that myself.
Yes, and I don't want that to come, because the stories are amazing, but
Hmm.
then the iconography is picked up by those people that stormed the Capitol in the US last year and all that
Hmm.
sort of stuff. So, yeah, there's a saying by a guy called Rune in Denmark, and it's this hammer smashes fascists. So yeah, it's a picture of a Viking hammer smashing a fascist. But yes,
Right.
you can
Ah!
find plenty of information on runes on the internet. Go through my book. I got good sources, and it's not full of
And they're clean.
horrible human beings.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
they're
clean,
clean. And let's talk about some of the common misconceptions about runes.
of course.
What could people be aware of besides avoiding some of those nasty
So yeah,
websites?
there's runes are a very primitive alphabet. They're a way primarily of writing down a history. They were found on things like gravestones saying, Harold Bluetooth lies here, he was a great king, or this sword belongs to Uthbert or was made by Uthbert, or this was Sven's bone, or things like that.
Uh-huh.
So actually, even in Turkey, there's one that says Halfdan was here
Hafton was
by
here,
yeah, by a
right?
poor Bulgarian guard who was guarding the patriarch. And so runes start off as an alphabet, and by looking at them as a language opposed to a set of mystical runes, mystical symbols first,
Right.
you can build a understanding of the human side of it before going and stepping into other worlds and spiritual resonance. Because then you've got a receptacle built in your psyche, in your heart, to go,
Uh-huh.
oh yes, I know this rune means the cattle, the abundance, the grain.
Right.
But then the story tells you, oh yes, it means more than that. But yeah, you can have that bit first. You can have the abundance, and then we can go deeper, like the iceberg, as you said earlier.
Uh-huh.
So start with the sounds, like the earth sounds that build the runes, and then you can go deeper into them to discover how they resonate with you particularly. Because there's no right or wrong with this. Lots of
Uh-huh.
scholars have ideas, but there's no right or wrong on how you interpret it.
Oh, I love this. So runes can be made of different materials. Is there a
Mhm.
vibrational difference between a rune made out of wood versus a crystal versus resin? Tell me your opinions on that.
I um I prefer working with natural materials. That's
Hmm.
just my preference. I tried resin. I got it everywhere. It wasn't the best. It wasn't a pleasant experience. However, if it works for you, rock on. That's my opinion of most things. Um, if the rune made out of resin is your favorite thing. If you want pink, sparkly, glittery runes, have them. If you want them made out of steel, I've got a friend who's a blacksmith who makes runes out of lumps of steel.
Wow.
That works. Or carved into silver or cast in gold. My first set were made from pebbles on the beach that I scored with a nail. And so whatever works for you is the way that they should, quote unquote, be. Don't let anyone tell you any different, because if it's yours, they're your things.
Right. So the different types of wood, I want to lead you in this because I had a set from birch that I loved and they felt right, whereas the oak didn't feel right to me. So you know what I mean? I had an affinity with this specific wood. Can you talk a little bit about that, the affinity piece with people with specific woods, or what energy do different woods hold that you make the runes out of?
Yeah, woods have different energies. So in the example you just gave, birch is a tree that will grow first after the ground's toxic. So if you grow pine trees in a forest and then cut them all down, pine makes the ground acid, but birch will grow there first and then turn the soil healthy so the oak can grow. So the birch is the first tree to recover from anything, from a forest fire, from toxic spills to burns or whatever. Birch will be the first to respond. And that powerful creamy wood is quite soft, but it grows really potently and will heal anything around it.
Wow.
Oak is an incredibly dense wood, and it's great for making things like handles or warships, because that's what they made the HMS Victory for in Trafalgar and things like that. They're made out of oak. They're very dense, they're very hard, but it takes a very long time to grow. I don't tend to make runes out of oak, unless it's bog oak, but that's a different thing, because the runes don't tend to hold its buzz in there, in my opinion. But if it works for you, it works for you.
Right, I get it, yeah.
I work a lot with bog oak. Bog oak is this oak that fell into a bog, usually in Ireland, or actually there's some coming out of Ukraine and down in I thought it was Dubrovnik and that sort of area as well, because
Croatia, Serbia,
Croatia. That's it. My brain went numb there. And this is bog that's been in the ground for 5,000 years.
Ooh, I gotta get a set of those.
And it comes across from not the creamy honey-coloured oak that we see nowadays, especially with American oak, North American oak. But it comes black, and if you can see it, that's one. That's my one.
Oh yeah.
It's black, almost black, like charcoal black, but it feels very soft. And this oak is an oak that can absorb all of the stuff. It's like a magnet for negativity. But because it's 5,000 years old, it can hold like more than we can ever be exposed to in our lifetimes.
So it's like a protection.
So it's a protection amulet of like this natural material that's
interesting.
Again, I love saying 5,000 years old.
You love to say 5,000 years old, yes.
Yeah. That holds all this negative around me, so it locks it away from me, and it's got my rune carved on it as well. And that's one of my favorite things to work with. But I've also got some bog yew that's from the Ukraine, and that's really nice as well. But yew wood is a wood that holds a flame, and the really ancient indigenous people like the Neanderthals would carry fire from one place to the next in a yew bowl. So you could put the fire in it, put a lid on it, and could carry it for 30 miles. And it wouldn't burn through the bowl, because it would be just such a slow burning energy.
That's fascinating.
Different vibrations. Rune stones and rune sticks used to be carved on fruit wood, because fruit wood had life coming through it, so you could eat the fruit and live. Or you could take that life energy and cut it down and make it into your runes. So there's got a lot of cost involved in having fruit wood runes, like cherry or apple or pear. So yeah, there's different energies there.
Oh, this is fascinating. Oh my gosh. Okay, now I'm getting a set of runes made by you, and which we could talk in a second. But I know you also offer a bespoke handcrafted rune pendant. This is what you're wearing now. Is that correct?
Yes, I don't know if you can see it on the screen. I don't. My camera's good enough.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that's the 5,000 bog oak tree.
Yeah.
So how did this specific tree? So how did you acquire this tree, or do you go to tree shops, or how do you know how you do it? I'm not a tree person.
I know this one's from a guy called Connor who lives in Connemara. who
Okay.
when I run out, I email him, and then he gets back to me a month later and says, "Yeah, it's in the post, Rich. You owe me however many euros." And there's a guy called Sergey who's in Ukraine who's been sending me some of these the Baltic stuff at the moment. So
And what about the Croatian? Do you have a
I
connection?
think he goes over there. He's got a mate somewhere. It's all very
Right.
complicated.
It's just sort of like the group
Yeah,
of bug people.
yeah,
Oh, I love
yes.
that. So if you are creating this for somebody, do you do a reading for them and get their birth rune or find the rune that is best for them? How do you do that?
So I offer options. My the one I sell most of is people ask me for an energy for the rune, for
Right.
the pendant. So I make them a bind rune, which is a combination of different runes to be formed together in their own unique way that will
Ooh,
then create a energy bespoke for that person,
that's
and that
cool.
I'll then burn into that rune, package it off, and send it off to them. Um, I really enjoy doing that because I love working with my hands and making things, and so
Hmm.
it's made specifically for that person in a way that's just for that person. There'll be no two the same,
Hmm.
and the energies what they request
Yeah.
into that rune. For birth runes, everyone's got a set of birth runes. They're much like your birth chart in astrology.
Really?
So you have like a sun rune, a moon rune, a earth rune, and a Norn rune. And Norns are the fates who
Uh-huh.
spin your future from the web of the weird. That's quite a complicated thing. So your sun rune is it's one of the 24 runes. It's dependent on where the sun is when you're born. Earth rune is where is where the midhaven is, and the moon rune is where the moon rune is. And they've got different energies surrounding how the universe was vibrating when you chose to pop into the world.
Fascinating. So you actually
Yes,
do like a rune chart for somebody based on their
yes,
birthday?
yes. So I make a little book that I'll send you, and it
I'm
has
signing up.
all your runes, your 4 birth runes, and a little bit of guidance around what they could mean for you. So my sun rune is Wunyo, the rune of bliss and happiness and contentment, which is great because I really like that. And my
Right.
wife is Hagalaz, which is the rune of quite drastic, sudden change,
Yeah.
of big hail falling from the sky. So all depend, and so they all have different energies that you can look into, much the same as you look at your astrology and go, ah, yes, yeah, he's a Libra and she's a Scorpio, and it works that way.
Right. So your gentler energy might help mitigate some of the Hagalots, right?
Yes,
That hit by lightning kind of energy,
yes,
right? That it is. Yeah. I always
definitely.
freak when I get that. No, what's going to happen?
Oh no,
Shock and awe, shock and awe. But it's good.
it's that, but it knocks everything down, so you've
Yeah.
got something really
Some,
solid to build on again. So you haven't lost anything. All the nutrients are there. But you build again, and you've got learned all the lessons already.
no, I love this. I just love this. What's your favorite portrayal of Viking culture in the mainstream? I'm just going to read this here. Is it Marvel's Thor or Loki? Or is it
Well,
J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings? Or The Hobbit? Or even True Blood's main character, Eric, who was a Viking prince?
I've not seen True Blood.
Oh, you haven't seen True
Um,
Blood? Oh, it's so
no,
good.
no. Uh, Chris Hemsworth, he's hot. Um, the Vikings, that the Amazon one, that's quite good fun. But it started off quite nice, and then got really ultra violent. I
With
sort of trailed
Ragnar,
off
that
my
one, actually, the actual Viking show?
yes,
Yes.
and then the Marvel ones are good fun because they bring a really interesting twist into how we interpret the ancient myths through the
Hmm.
lens of media and the 21st century, which I quite enjoy.
Uh-huh.
Um, there's a Netflix one called The Northman,
The
which is
Northman,
done by a
that's
bunch of
hilarious.
Norwegian guys, and it's stupid and funny and
It's the
irreverent, and I
dumbest
really
thing.
enjoy that. Yeah,
Oh, I
it's
love that
lots of
one
good
too.
jokes.
The Northman. Have you seen Last Kingdom?
Yes, yeah, I've got a friend who was in that. Yeah, it's yeah, really good. I like that. The author Bernard Cornwell did some really good research, and it's a
Yeah,
very historically accurate, which makes my geek head go, yeah.
me too. I'm a
And
historian nut too, like that. I love it too.
yes, and Uhtred and those stories fit really well with the evolution of Christianity, because you could really see
The two
actually, yeah, you're
together.
right. Yeah, to see how the two parallels evolved, and realizing that one died out because all the power was with the other, and no one would trade with the pagans if they weren't Christian. So you had to become Christian to be traded with, and it slowly died out that way. Yeah, the Last Kingdom is a really good fun, and the way they've got the fatalistic almost sense of humor with their Viking characters, I quite enjoy.
Yeah, no, I love it too. It's really it's very cool. I love all that old history stuff, because we don't remember when the transition happened, right? Like, even my cultural background again was Balkan Slav, in the Slavic nations. It was really the 12th century. It took a long time to get them. They were very, very stubborn. My people were stubborn people.
Well, they had a whole Teutonic order of knights, didn't they? Sent to stop the pagans.
Stop the pagans. And then we have something called double faith. I really did a lot of research around this a few years ago when people were saying, look, check out your own ancestry. And so I did. And then I'm like, oh, this is so interesting. So they kind of spliced a lot of the paganism from especially the Serbs, and they stuck it on the Christian piece. And you'll notice that too in the Ukraine and in, parts of Russia, et cetera. They have this kind of something called double faith, which is still acknowledging the pagan holidays, etc., but they put a different name on it. Just like they slapped this on it, and they just figured, okay, fine, we're Christian. It's just so.
I hadn't realized quite how close to the surface it was in the Balkan in the Slavic states. Because if you look in like Protestant Christianity or Catholic Christianity, they've done exactly the same.
Yep.
Like Yule, Jul, Yule is the 21st to the 12th of January.
Yep.
And isn't that a big holiday there with a guy who was born and there was 3 old men and a manger and all that sort of stuff. That was then. And Easter and
Easter, it's
like
all the
holidays. That thin veneer of Christianity placed over these ancient beliefs. And even if you go to churches, the church was 200 yards away from me here has got green men carved into the stones when the Masons built it in 1066. So
there's that overlap, and again, it reminds us that we are not independent of history, that history lives within our veins, and that we can't deny what was. We have to learn the truth of what was. Learn from it, exactly. I think it's really important right now in our history. This is awesome. Thank you so much. I have so enjoyed meeting you. For more information about Rich Lister and the work he does, which is deep and meaningful, and you all want to shop, I just know it. You want to shop at his fabulous Viking wares. No, not at his wares, but for his wares, including his handcrafted rune sets like one I just ordered for myself. He's actually going to go cut down a tree just for me to make these things. Please go to richardlister.com. And Rich, I think your book is available everywhere books are sold. Is that right?
That is true, yes. Hay House will be very happy with me.
Hay House is very happy. Yes. And it's really, really good. It really is excellent. And I love that you're a geek. You're super bright, super intelligent, and you're such a bright light in the world. And I'm thrilled to have met you. Thank you so much for being here.
It's been an absolute honor. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Well, that's it for today. This was Inside the Wooniverse. I'm Colette Baron-Reid. Until next time, be well.